Peace everyone, Unmask Art here, and welcome back to another pastel tutorial. Today we're continuing on the project we started last week, which is that sunlight portrait. And the plan for today is to just put in her shirt. Her shirt is essentially just two colors, with some subtle variation in values and tones. But for the most part, her shirt is like a navy blue. And so we're going to start with the base colors, like we always do with pretty much everything. And so the first color that I'm going to start with, and by the way, I'm using just Carbothello pencils. First color I'm starting with is 450. I'm going to get some really bright blue in the shirt starting off. Hello, Chandri, Moni, Leah, Doja, Bonnie, Mihai. Good to see everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started here and start applying this bright blue. Like I said, this color is it's a bit saturated, quite a bit saturated than what the shirt actually is, and that's just because I'm going to use it for the base color, and then I'm going to use gray right over top of it to pull back that saturation, and then should be left with a pretty nice looking blue. So that's the strategy for this part of the project. And of course, if you guys have any questions for me, don't hesitate to ask. Oh, hi there, Nikianti. Hope everyone is having a good week so far. For me, it feels so weird to be Tuesday. I don't know why. My days have never been so mixed up before. But yeah, for some reason, I think yesterday I thought it was Friday, and yeah, it was just really weird week so far. Hello, Miss Ellie. So with these base layers, I'm not trying to cover the paper like 100%, just get like a decent amount of the color on there. Since this isn't actually the color that the shirt is, there's no reason to try to cover the paper 100%. Just try to get it generally where the line art is. So that's one thing that I'll be doing here. Just kind of tracing my line art and then filling it in. And be sure not to apply this to the skin if you're looking at the line art, since it kind of just goes right into the skin. The rays of light, and you don't want to give her a base color of blue skin, so just be mindful of where you're applying the color. Did I start earlier? There was something weird with this stream. For some reason it said like an hour or something. I'm not sure what's going on with the time thing. I must have messed up when the stream was supposed to start, I guess. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you. Oh, you know what? I think I meant to do this stream at 1400. Maybe that's what I messed up. I think the reason I was going to do this stream an hour earlier than normal is because my wife and I are going to go see a flat today, right after I finish streaming, and I didn't want to have to rush, and I don't know how long this is going to take me. So I might be moving here soon. Hopefully, I'm really hoping, really hoping I'll be able to tell you guys soon that I'm moving to a new flat. Because the plan, once I move, is to set up an actual studio space, and that will make making videos and stuff like 1,000 times easier, having my own dedicated spot and having more space in general. So that's what I look forward to. Now, this part of the process here might look a little strange if for anybody that might be following along on this project, but bear with me. It will it will start to make sense soon. We're actually just coloring the highlights, if you can even call them highlights, because they're still very dark. It's still like a dark gray blue. Essentially just a cool blue, actually. But I want to make sure that I have the blue showing up like quite a bit in the shirt, just to have a nice splash of color. So that's kind of the plan here with this bright blue base coat. How do I control the pressure of the pencil? Just I naturally have a very light touch, and so I usually am always pressing really light in general, and then beyond that it's just experience. If you don't naturally have a light touch when you're using your pencils, then you just have to be conscious of how much pressure you're applying, and you have to put the effort in to apply less pressure if you find yourself being one of those people that pushes too hard. When it comes to pastel pencils, you never have to press hard. There's never a reason to press hard with pastels. Okie dokie. So now I'm going to switch colors. I'm going to put that color away. Probably won't even use that color anymore. So the next color that I'm using is the dark blue. This is 390. And I'm going to color the rest of the shirt this color. So everything that I didn't color is now going to be colored with this dark blue. And with this color, I'm going to want to be pretty close to covering the paper, because this is almost the exact color that the shirt needs to be. But I also need to apply a layer of black on top of it, because it's not quite dark enough. But I'll just apply a little bit of black on top of this color once I'm done. But for the most part, you can pretty much just cover the paper completely with this color, and you'll be in good shape later on. Oh, good morning, Barbara. And Carrie. Oh, hey, what's up, Val? Good to see you. Now for the edges of the shirt, to get sharp edges, you just have to uh, keep applying the color in the same spot over and over again, and eventually it will build up a really nice edge. So the shirt separation from the skin right here, you just have to go slow and apply the color lightly and repeatedly in the same spot, and that's how you get clean edges. You do not get clean edges by pressing harder. In fact, that is the worst way to try to get clean edges, because what you'll do is you'll crumble the pencil and it will not look nice. Not to mention you're just wasting your pencil. I have a few lines here, so I'm going to grab black, and just to preserve the line art, I'm going to apply a little bit of black here. There. That's just the part of the seam around the neck. Oh, hello, Sneaks. Hello, Evan. How do I feel about Pitt pastel pencils? I like the Pitt pastel pencils. Yeah, they're a good pencil. However, I find that the saturation levels in the Pitt pencil is a little bit lower than the Carbothellos, and for that reason, I don't recommend them as your primary set of pastel pencils. So if you're looking to get pastel pencils, I always recommend getting the 60 set of Carbothellos, because when it comes to price, the Faber-Castell Pitt pencils and the Carbothello pastel pencils are almost always the same price, give or take, a couple dollars or whatever. And yeah, with the Carbothellos, you get really bright, vibrant colors. Whereas with the Pitt pencils, the color variety in the set, because I have the full set, it just tends to lean more towards the earthy, natural tones. And because of that, you don't get the highly saturated colors that you find in the Carbothello set. So it makes the set just a tiny bit limited to the vibrancy that you can get overall, but they're still really great pencils. And if you already have the Carbothellos, I think that the Pitt pencils make a great secondary set to just give you more flexibility with color, because they have really nice skin tones in the Pitt pencils, whereas the Carbothello pencils, they don't really have that variety in skin tone. You have to do a lot of mixing to get good skin tone with the Carbothellos. I mean, regardless of the pencils you use, you're always going to have to do some degree of mixing, but the Pitt pencils, they have a wider range of those colors that you associate with skin. A lot of the tans and like medium peaches and stuff. So they have great base skin color in the Pitt pencils. Really the only pastel pencils I would not recommend getting is the Derwent. I don't recommend getting the Derwent pencils, because for the price, they're incredibly hard to sharpen, and they like because of how expensive they are, you don't really get great value for the cost. Whereas with the Carbothellos, you get amazing value for the cost. And if you want to go like above and beyond and have the highest value pencil, then just get the Caran d'Ache. As you can see, this is going to take a little bit of time to do. What I'll probably end up doing here is alternating with this color, with these colors once I get like a decent foundation of it. And then I'll switch to the grays and I'll go over it with like the gray and the black and stuff. And then I'll just redo it again. So probably 4 layers of pencils here will be what I need to finish up for today. So as long as you see me taking on this this first layer, just multiply that by like 3 or 4, and that's about how long I'll be streaming for. Where can you buy the masking film from? So I get my masking film from Jackson's, and I bought a roll of it like what feels like forever ago, and I still don't see the end of the roll in sight. I think it was like maybe 10 meters or something like that. Like a 10-meter roll. I'm not sure exactly. It could have been 8. But there's a lot there, and I've been using it like as often as I can with my projects because it's just so wonderful to use. And it's called Frisket. So Frisket masking film is what I use. I'm sure there's other brands of masking film that you could probably use, but that's the brand that that I saw on Jackson's, and so I just went with that. I didn't see any other brands, so I just went with that, got the roll, and I don't regret it. Oh, hey, what's up, Mateusz? There is always hope. There is always hope for somebody that either did art or didn't do art. Learning to create, learning to draw, learning to color. You just have to start, and with time comes experience, and experience will always be the best teacher when it comes to creating and drawing and coloring and painting and all of that. And similar to chess, you study openings in chess so that you can avoid the mistakes early on in the game, so that you actually have a chance at winning. And studying the basics, the foundations in art is a lot like studying the openings in chess. you learn those foundational techniques in order to avoid the simple mistakes that other artists are making. And another chess analogy to use is taking your time to make your moves. Patience is a huge factor in whether or not you're ever going to excel in art. You have to be patient enough to apply the technique without making mistakes. Because it's easy to not make mistakes if you simply just take the time to not make them. But the reality is a lot of people that do art just don't have that level of patience yet. And they want to see the end result too quickly. And anybody can do art if they just allow themselves to spend the time, the proper amount of time. In general, do I find certain pigment colors are more scratchy and different to apply? I do with soft pastels. I haven't had that issue with the pastel pencils. I'm grabbing black here to put in a couple lines. So there's depending on the medium, mistakes can make or break the piece. For instance, let's go with inking. So if you use ink in your work, there is no room for error there. If you make a mistake with ink, it is permanent. You cannot erase it. You cannot go over it. Very similar to watercolors. There's some things that you can correct in watercolors, but for the most part, it's pretty much permanent. And then you have mediums like acrylic paint. Acrylic paint, it is impossible to make a mistake on acrylic paint, because you could literally throw black paint onto your perfectly white canvas and you'd still be able to cover it, and there would be absolutely no remnants of that mistake. And so depending on the medium that you use, there's certain levels of forgiveness. I usually refer to mediums that are really forgiving as mediums that you can't really make a mistake in. Pastels is a very forgiving medium because you have so much flexibility in covering mistakes. Now there is, of course, a limitation with how severe of a mistake you can correct, but at the end of the day, it's much easier to make a mistake with the permanent mediums like markers, ink, watercolor, than it is with something like acrylic paint, oil paint, or pastels. And so when you're getting into color, when you're learning to color or paint things, usually people start with a friendlier medium like pastels or acrylic paint, and even oil painting. Oil painting is not as friendly. It's not as forgiving as acrylic paint. But you can still correct a lot of mistakes in oil painting. It just takes a tremendous amount of effort and time. Whereas with acrylic paint, it doesn't really take any effort or time. So I'm almost done with this base layer of this dark blue. The next thing I'll do is go over it with, go over the highlights with a medium gray, and then I'll go over the dark blue with black, and then I'll just start over again. Reapply. I probably won't reapply any more of that light blue, but I'll cross that bridge when I get there. Just depends on how much the gray removes the blue, because I don't really need it to be as blue as it's showing up. There. All right. So the gray that I'm going to use on the highlights is 726. And I'm just going to do the same exact thing that I just did. I'm not going to like press hard. I'm not trying to cover the paper 100%, just letting the pencil do what it does best. Might look a little strange, being that these are highlights and they will almost appear darker than the surrounding navy blue, but that will be corrected in later layers. The goal here is to just mix the colors together, kind of get a uniform to color. And I have my blender here as well that I'll use to smooth it out. Yeah, most people will always have patient issues with art. Mastering your patience is the first step to mastering art. And as patient as I can be with my work, I am equally impatient with it. So even after 25 years of doing this, I still find myself struggling at times to remain patient and avoid the otherwise avoidable mistakes that I continue to make in my work. Because I am nowhere near free of mistakes in my work, because that would make me perfect, and I am definitely not perfect. Everybody also has their own goals in mind with their art. You know, some people, they don't ever want to go towards realism. They want to be like a looser style or something along those lines, something stylized that they create. And that takes a whole nother, that's like a whole nother branch in which you can go into when it comes to art. When you go for the more stylized things, you have to study kind of the base structure of what makes things look like what they look like. A lot of understanding how colors are interacting and being able to identify the important colors in any instance, and just the use of colors in general to create the feeling and look of what you want. All right, now I'm switching to black, and I'm going to just go right over the navy blue that I applied. Oh, hey, what's up, Chrissy and Jeff and Tessa? Welcome, welcome. Oh, and Catrice, yeah, Lorray, Arnie. Did I miss anybody else coming in? Marcy, I see you as well. So with this layer of black, I'm essentially going to be turning the shirt just black. It's probably just going to look black on camera, and I'm fine with that because I can lightly apply the navy blue right over top of the black, and I'll keep a lot of what I want, that what I'm using the black for in the first place is to get that value correct, because the navy blue isn't as dark as I need it to be. It needs to be darker, which is why I have to mix it with black. And so getting a nice layer of black down will help me cover the paper, and then I can just use the navy blue to smooth everything and then give that black a nice tint of blue, which is really all I want. I essentially want the shirt, essentially the shadow part of the shirt is just black with a hint of blue. Also, like I mentioned, I have my paper blender, and so once I get enough pigment on there and I start smoothing it out, you'll get rid of the graininess and you'll get rid of the unevenness that the colors are creating right now. Because right now, all of the colors that I've applied, they're really, really uneven. And if you're one of the few people following along on this project, don't be worried about the unevenness of your colors, because we haven't done any blending yet. And once we blend those colors together, they'll get more even and just be kind of smooth. Okay, it seems like I'm making pretty good time so far. It's only been like a half hour since I started, so that's not too bad. The you ordered the Carbothello, the lamp black. I don't know the Carbothello colors by their name. I only know them by their number. But I think the lamp black. I think I can imagine what the lamp black is. I think it's like the dark gray purple color. That's what I think, probably. What type of paper is suitable for pastel pencil? So there's a few papers that people have used with pastel pencil, but what I'd say is you're not going to get any better result than pastel matte. I've used I've used several different papers, sandpapers and sanded papers, and tested out pastel pencils on them, even the Lux Archival paper. And the Lux Archival paper is going to be the number 2 runner-up when it comes to pastel pencils specifically. because pastel pencils, if you've ever used makeup before, which half of my chat or more than half of my chat probably has, when you apply eyeshadow, you always notice that, like, when you use the little sponge tool or whatever to blend it, it kind of lifts off a little bit from the skin. And when you're mixing colors together and when you're layering colors on top of each other, you have a really like small window to get those colors to blend really well together. I mean, anybody who's used eyeshadow knows that it's not as easy as some people make it look. There's a reason people do it professionally and are able to do it professionally, because it is difficult to do. And you have a small degree of control there, and very few people can master that small degree of control. And when it comes to pastel matte and pastel pencils, pastel matte gives you the widest window of controlling your color, whereas a narrow window would be, as I described, using eyeshadow. It's very easy to, mix the colors into mud with eyeshadow. There's not a lot that the makeup is holding to on the skin. Whereas with pastel matte, you have a much wider window. And what I mean by that is you can make very, very, very subtle adjustments with the application of your pencils on pastel matte that other papers just don't offer. And I have tried, and pastel matte just far exceeds that level of control that is great about pastel pencils. And so I only recommend using pastel matte for that reason, because the level of control is it is unpassable with any other paper. And so, yeah, just use pastel matte and don't worry about any other paper. And even when it comes to soft pastels, I recommend just using pastel matte. I realize that it is like the most expensive paper. It's not cheap by any means, but if you're going to spend the time working with pastels, then would it be in your best interest to work on a surface that is just the best? Because as soon as you go away from pastel matte and you start working on different papers, your level of enjoyment is going to go down significantly. There is no paper like pastel matte with pastels, period. Does not exist. I wish that there was. I wish there was cheaper versions. I truly do. But I cannot relinquish the level of control that pastel matte gives me with pastels. I just cannot accept it. I went out of the line a little bit. My pencil's a little bit too dull. I need to lift off some of that black right there. Make your Patreon free for a day. My Patreon has been free for a month and a half now. Like, all of these tutorials that I've been live streaming twice a week for the past 2 months or whatever, is my Patreon being free for everyone. But as far as the archive, I can't even do that. The archive of tutorials and stuff, I have 250 tutorials or something like that on Patreon. I can't open that up for free, even if I wanted to. Did I hit 100,000 subscribers? I haven't even checked. Let's see, where am I at? I suppose I could just ask you guys, but I'm just gonna look. Give me a second. I think last week I looked. Okay, yeah, I haven't hit 100,000 yet. I'm close. 97.6 ain't bad. So soon enough. Soon enough. And what I will do for the 100,000 is I'm going to do a special live stream Q&A where I talk about how I became a professional artist and give you all the advice I can possibly muster in a single sitting on if you want to become a professional YouTuber artist. I'll give you all my insider secrets. Not that I actually have any insider secrets, because if you guys ask the question, I give you the answer regardless of the number of subscribers I have. So, but I will do a special Q&A for that, where we'll just hang out and chat. You guys can ask me whatever you want, and I'll give you the history of my channel and all of that stuff. So if you're thinking you want to do YouTube full time, try to be an artist on YouTube, I can answer your questions, and you guys can share your channel in the chat and whatever you want to do. That live stream will just be your guys' celebration. Okie dokie. Now that layer is done, I'm going to use my blender. I have two ends that I use. I'm going to use one end for the lighter area. So I'm going to blend out the light blue and gray. And then I'll use the other end for the black. So this will significantly soften and smooth out the shirt so it doesn't look so awful. I can't think of another word other than awful. Am I happy? Are you happy for us to share your upcoming streams on Facebook? I am. Yes, absolutely. You guys can share my live streams all you want. Absolutely. Yeah, share away. Would it be possible for Nugget to make a cameo appearance for the celebration? Absolutely. Nugget has to be there. Yeah, I'll bring Nugget. He's over there watching me right now. He's looking. No, he's not looking at me directly. But he's sitting over there, listening in. So that's pretty close to the shade of blue that I need. So I might not have to really add any more of that light blue color. I'll have to go over the area again with more gray, which will make it less blue. But for now, it's pretty close. Also, with the blending process here, I am not applying really any pressure. No different pressure than what I use with the pencils. There's no reason to grind your blenders into the paper at all, ever. If the colors are not spreading out, if the colors aren't smoothing and spreading, then it's not because you have to press harder, it is simply because you need more pigment on the paper. So just keep that in mind. If you feel like you're struggling to get the colors to spread out. Indeed, Lilia. Yes, yes. There. Um, it's great to see all of you guys making friends. Over the years, I mean, I've known many of you for years now, and and then same thing. You guys, many of you have known each other for years, and it's really great. It's more than what I could have ever hoped for when I started my channel, to be honest with you. I mean, when I made the Facebook group, the Unmask family, I chose that particular name for the group for a reason. I think you guys can appreciate that name very much, all things considered. Over the years, getting to know one another, chatting on Facebook, all that, chatting in the streams. I mean, you've even gotten to know my sister, Cece, quite a bit as well. A lot of you. I know Chandri, you've like FaceTimed with her a couple times, and many of us have done the art chat as well. I was in the art chat once, and there was like 16, 17 of us just hanging out and chatting for like several hours. So it's definitely more than I could have ever hoped for when I started my channel, because partially, I mean, it was never really my intention to teach art when I started my YouTube channel. That was not what I originally intended on doing. I just wanted to make art and make videos of it, and that's where it all started. But I'll get into that story in the 100,000K subscriber stream. Is it better to use a bud or stump for blending? Honestly, I don't know what a bud is. These are just cheap paper blenders. I just ordered like a big old pack of them off Amazon one time for like $1. So there's nothing special at all about them. And then I just use sandpaper to clean them and to sharpen the tips. When it comes to blending pastels, just use whatever tool you like best, whatever works best for you. Because I mean, everybody has different tastes and the way things work, which is why paper choice, with the exception of pastel, there's so many different paper choices that people like to work with when it comes to colored pencils and whatnot, because the way people use a medium, it's always different, and so you have to go out and try different things and explore and experiment to find what you like to work with the best. And when it comes to pastel pencils, I really like using the paper blenders, but other people might not like it. Those people would be wrong, but they could not like it. I think if you have a heavy hand, odds are you're not going to like using a paper blender. Sorry if I missed anything in chat, I apologize. Frisket is gloss or flat, and low or high tack. Which do I want? So as far as like gloss or matte, I don't think it's going to make a difference. I don't even know what mine is. It seems kind of shiny, I guess, but I don't know. And it's low tack. The frisket is low tack, meaning that it doesn't stick real hard to the surface. I didn't even know that there was different grades of tackiness with the frisket. But I can't imagine that you'd want something that's really sticky, because the way that I apply my frisket is I just cut out a square that covers my subject. I just lay it on there. I use a pen to trace the outline. I peel it back up and put it right back on the original backing, and then I use scissors to cut it out. And then I peel it back up and put it back on my paper. And sometimes I don't get it in the right spot the very first time, so I have to peel it up and reapply it. And having it low tack makes that really easy. I can't imagine it being super sticky and having to do that, because there'd be maybe some potential to mess up the paper if it's too sticky. So yeah, I'd be a little bit cautious with that. When I purchase Pastel Matte, do I get pads of color or just white? I just get the white ones, because most of the projects that I do, I am covering the paper completely, and I just don't find much use in the colored stuff, since I completely cover it. And so if the what ends up happening is really just a subtle difference in value on colors. Oh, thank you so much, Chrissy, for the super chat. You're always so generous with the super chat. Thank you. I am very happy to have you as a friend, Chrissy. I truly am. I truly am. I look forward to the opportunity of flying down to Australia for the first time to stay and hang out. Yeah. I really wanted to. I wanted to go this past January. I wanted to go down, but I have to wait for my wife to be able to take off the work, you know. So hopefully next year. Hopefully next year. I'd love to get out of Poland during the winter, because winters here are just miserable. There's never enough snow in Poland to make winters worth being here for. How long does it take me to create a piece like this? Uh, I would say around 10 to 12 hours when I'm live streaming it. But if I was doing this as a personal project, I'd probably spend closer to 50 or 60 hours. The projects that I do on the live streams, I tend to expedite the process just a tiny bit, so that I don't spend I don't spend 4 months live streaming the same project. So I try to get through my Patreon projects swiftly without rushing. That's a very difficult balance. I want to be able to get through the projects quickly, but I don't want to rush, and that's a tricky thing to balance. Because what ends up happening is I'll get to a certain point where like I'll look at what time it is, and I've already spent like an hour and a half, and then I end up like rushing a little bit to try to get the stream done. And then at the end of it, unfortunately, the the byproduct of that is that by the time I'm done with the project, one, it's not as good as I wish that it was, and two, I end up just not liking most of the things I do. So I end up with a bunch of artwork I'm not actually a fan of, because I know that I rushed a little bit too much, and it doesn't look as good as I know that I can produce. And then the funny thing is, like, each time I do it, I always try to remind myself not to do it anymore, but it hasn't really worked out. All right, now the shirt is starting to look like a shirt. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have to sharpen my pencils. So if you don't mind, give me about 20 seconds. All right, I know that was more than 20 seconds, but I think you can find it in your hearts to forgive me. Will I be able to visit my family anytime soon? No. Uh, that's an easy question to answer, and unfortunately, the answer is no. I wish that I could. Uh, for the past few years now, I've went every July, well, end of June, early July, because everybody has 4th of July off in America, so I go during that holiday, and then during Thanksgiving, because for the same reason. And I've been able to do that for the past few years now, which have been really great. I enjoy that a lot. But for obvious reasons, I'm not going to be traveling during this time, even though technically I am allowed to. I would not, however, be allowed to come back to Poland, and that would be a problem with me. The color I'm using, again, is the 390 color, by the way. And I'm going back over the dark area, bringing back in some of the navy blue. And then this layer here is going to really help smooth out the color as I'm applying more pigment, and the paper will be fully covered, because even right now the paper is still showing through. Can't wait, Chrissy. Yeah, I cannot wait. For sure. Cannot wait. It's going to be super exciting when the time comes, and I've always wanted to visit Australia anyway, and having having you there and being able to hang out for the first time together, that's going to make the trip even better. So I really, really can't wait for it. One of the biggest reasons my wife and I can't do any traveling right now is because one of her coworkers is on maternity leave, and so there's actually no opportunity for them to take any time off while they're missing a coworker. So essentially, she can't really take any time off this entire year, unfortunately. By the way, if I happen to have missed anybody's question in chat, feel free to ask it again, because sometimes I miss things. Can pastel pencils, are pastel pencils water soluble? Technically they are, but I would not mix it with water. I would not do that. In fact, I would not use anything wet to mix pastels. Because you can use alcohol, you can just use regular rubbing alcohol as a solvent to blend pastels. And I have tested it several times, but there's just no point. Like I just can't see any benefit of it whatsoever, because you have so much control blending the pastels dry. You have a lot more control over the pigment if you just leave it dry. As soon as you add something wet, whether it's water or alcohol or any other solvent, you lose the control that makes pastels so great. And in some cases that could be beneficial if you're looking to get a particular look. You know, if you experiment with enough, I'm sure you'll find a use for it. But I don't want to sit there and wait forever for them to dry. That's the thing. Pastel mat takes forever to dry. This is, what is this? This the second layer? No, this is the third layer, right? Yeah. Yeah, so this is the third layer, and at this point, after the third layer, you should have the paper completely covered. So blending will be a lot easier, and the colors will just be better looking, more consistent. Your colors will be more consistent. Absolutely. see, this highlight here is not as large as I have it. That's a good rule to remember with highlights. Always make them larger than what they are because they're so much easier to make smaller. I feel like some of that graphite is still showing up. I hope I don't have that problem with the skin. I think maybe when I was transferring the line art, I was pressing a bit too hard. Gave the paper a little bit of an indent. The shirt is looking a lot better though. Now that the paper is almost completely covered, definitely starting to look right. It has I don't know how well you can see it on camera, but it has a really good tone of blue. And I think with the last layer of black, it will darken up a little bit, and then covering the highlights, making those a bit more uniform, getting the paper covered there, the shirt will look really good. Out of context with nothing else in the picture, sometimes everything can just look a little weird, but for the most part I think it looks pretty good. Oh, hey, what's up, Electro? Good to see you, my friend. Am I going to put Ninja Purple in there? No Ninja Purple on the shirt. But for sure Ninja Purple will find its way into the skin tones, that's for sure. Lots and lots of Ninja Purple opportunities in the skin on this project. Hello there, Roblox and Cherry. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you. Always a pleasure seeing new faces or new names in the live chat. Almost done with this color, and then I'm going to work in the highlights to cover those up. And man, the color is almost perfect. The color in the highlights is almost perfect. I hate to have to kind of start over with the mixing, but I think I'm going to have to add a little bit of that blue before I apply the gray, because I think I'm just going to turn it gray. But maybe I'll start with the gray and just go from there. It's just so close to exactly what I need it to look like. It's got the right saturation level, the right value. All of it's just like really good. It just isn't quite covering the paper, which is a problem. And it's still a little rough, which I definitely don't like. Alright, so let's put that pencil aside. I'm going to grab the 726 gray, and I'm going to go back over the highlights here. The goal is to cover the paper here, so even if I go a little bit too gray with it, I can always put in a little bit of the light blue to get the color back if I need it. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to use a little bit of that blue. This is going to definitely turn too gray. That's too bad. Really like that color. The problem with this particular color of the shirt is that I didn't have, there was no color in the Carbothello set that was close enough to just cover the paper with. And so I have to use a mix of the gray and the blue, because it's like smack dab in the middle of these two colors. It's both gray and it's both blue. This gray is just a bit too dark as far as value goes, and that blue is just a bit too bright and a bit too blue. Actually, it's way too blue. Oh, you just got the Jacquard sharpener? Congratulations, you're gonna love it. Yeah, that pencil sharpener is just the best. Well, I mean, it's the best I've ever used. But it's great to have. I'll probably never have to use another pencil sharpener. Although there is one downside, but it's not really the pencil sharpener's fault. It's the pencil company's fault. The Caran d'Ache colored pencils are just too fat to fit into it, which is really unfortunate because they're unnecessarily thick pencils. Like there's no reason that they're thicker than normal pencils, and it's really like just irritating that they changed the size. If there was some benefit to it, then I'd understand, but I don't think there's a person on this planet that would be able to convince me that there is a legitimate benefit that they have to be like a full, like 2 millimeter longer in circumference. Yeah, same thing with their pastel pencils. Their pastel pencils are like carnival thick. if I can describe them as like unnecessarily thick, their pastel pencils is like a joke at how thick they are. Oh, okay, Chrissy. Yeah, we'll catch up. You live stream tomorrow. I hope I'll be able to stop in and say hello and hang out for a bit. All right, now that I've fully covered that with the gray, I'm going to switch to the blue. This is the 450 blue that I used in the beginning, and I'm going to bring back some of that blue tone to those highlights. This will also lighten it up a little bit, which isn't totally necessary given that it's pretty close to the value that I need. I don't have to use a whole lot of this pencil. And it's just getting easier and easier to apply color now. So the next thing, after I finish with this, I will go back to the black, and then I will just lightly smooth out the shirt with the black, and then I will blend it out and we'll see what else needs to be done. Maybe a few minor adjustments. I do have one other color here for some highlights. It's just a brighter gray for some of the bright spots in the highlights themselves. Give the light a little bit extra depth. That is almost perfect color. All right, let's grab the black. I'm gonna grab a pencil extender really quick because this pencil's getting a little short for my hand. Come on. I wasn't paying attention. Instead of putting the pencil away, I put the pencil blender away. Trying to read chat and get this pencil blender or pencil extender. There we go. Now I can hold it back. I like to hold the pencils. I'm just using black, by the way. I like to hold the pencil back far like this because that allows me to have a really light pressure on the tip of the pencil. It's kind of hard to press hard, even if you are heavy-handed when you're holding the pencil all the way back like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a pass with the black here, and that should get me really close to what I need the shaded part of the shirt to look like. And wherever I need it to be a bit lighter, I will use the dark blue. And I'll use the paper blender to smooth out the colors before I do those minor adjustments. But we're almost done. We're almost done with the shirt. I told you it'd start to look right after a while. Just takes some time. If you guys have any more questions for me, now is a good time to ask, since I'm not doing anything overtly technical, just kind of doing another layer with the black. So it makes it easier to answer questions when I don't have to pause to explain things. I'm glad you can start to see what it's supposed to look like. Yeah, it's kind of a strange thing to have isolated, since it really just kind of has two colors, and you'll see a very similar thing in the skin. The skin almost has just two colors. And a lot of what I'll probably end up doing with the skin is trying to just do exactly what I did here with the shirt. Is I'll put in some darker tones for where the shadows are, and then I'll just apply like one full base color. But yeah, it's going to be a very similar process for this entire project. I think really what is going to come out to be the most difficult part is the hair, because the hair has still a lot of colors in it and stuff, and a lot of texture, and everybody always struggles with hair. But for everything else in this project, really it's just about isolating those two color tones, because there's essentially just a shadow and then there's a light. And so you just have to isolate those two colors, apply them as base layers, and then make your subtle adjustments after you have them filled in. And with pastel pencils, that's like the easiest thing to do. How many layers can I get with pastel pencils on pastel mat? I have never run out of room to apply layers. I have always just stopped because I got to where I needed to get to. So I can't even answer the question, because I've applied so many layers on pastel mat that I lost count. And I didn't stop because I couldn't apply more layers. I stopped because I got to where I wanted to get to. So Realistically, I'd say like infinite, but I can't say that for sure because I've never applied infinite layers on pastel matte before. And that's something exclusive to pastel matte, by the way. You're not going to get that with any other paper you try. You might get that with the Lux Archival, but again, when it comes to specifically pastel pencils, pastel matte is the only option. The Lux Archival does not work as well. There is a limitation to the control that you get, and to try to explain what that control is. So with pastel matte, say you completely cover the paper. You just you just cover it completely, 100%, with a nice thick layer of pastel pencil. On top of that layer, what you're able to do is make the smallest micro adjustments to the value, to the color tone, and everything in between, with any number of pencils. And in that regard, I have never been able to not make changes that I want to appear. Very small, subtle changes. And I've spent just hours and hours on small parts, just no bigger than that space between my fingers there, making those micro adjustments to make it look at exactly the way that I wanted it to look. And you cannot do that on any other paper. You're as excited for me to finish. Yeah. Well, that's cool. That's cool. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I started, I like started my channel. I was motivated to start my channel because of how fun it was to see art like go from one thing to the next and all the way up until it's finished. And it never stopped like being exciting to see the work progress into what its completion looks like. And that's probably why I enjoy just doing art in general, because I like to see the progression right in front of my own eyes when I'm doing it, even when I'm doing it. So it doesn't matter if somebody else is doing it or if I'm doing it. Just getting to see the evolution of it over time has always been just really enjoyable for me. And then the added benefit of getting better over the years is really great. And there's a lot of pieces throughout my history of making art that I can remember looking at when I finished and thinking, man, I can't believe I was able to make that. Because, just a couple years ago, even just a couple years ago, there was art that I just didn't think I'd ever be able to produce. And now the kind of art that I'm able to produce now, I would have never dreamed of when I was in high school, that I'm able to do it with almost no thinking. Like I'm able to just produce it. With just a bit of planning, I just have the library of technical skills to be able to do it. And all I have to do is apply the time. That is the difficult thing at this point, is just letting myself apply the time. Let's see here. I think what I'm going to do, I have to sharpen this pencil one more time, so give me another 20 seconds or so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the 390 color, the dark blue, and I'm going to just use this to kind of smooth out that transition between the highlights and the shadows, because it's not very clean, those transitions. And then I can also apply this where I don't want the black to be as dark in the shadows. So just bringing a little bit of blue back into the shirt. And you can see I'm holding it all the way near the back. That way I apply like no pressure. This lets the color like very gradually start to show up and make a difference. Oh, okay, Diane. You have a lovely rest of your day. So now I need to feather these edges a little bit between the shirt and the highlight. And part of that will come during the blending stage also. So I don't need to do it all with just the pencil. This will give the shadows a little bit more contour, as I'm kind of using this color to create the value changes that are happening here. I decided to use this blue here to do this because I wanted to bring some of the navy blue into this part of the shirt. And I'm just letting the color like really slowly build up. Excuse me. Yeah, holding the pencil too tight, a lot of people have that problem. I've never had that problem. I've been fortunate to never have that problem. I've always had an extremely light touch and light grasp. I'm holding. If you struggle with holding the pencil too tight, try holding it with less fingers. Because if you're doing this, if you're holding the pencil the way that you write, you should, unless you're drawing lines, you should never hold the pencil the way that you write your name or write words, because you're almost always squeezing the pencil too much when you're doing that. But yeah, your hand will hurt really fast if you're a pencil squeezer, and that's never good. Don't want your hand to hurt. You won't be able to draw for very long if you're choking your pencils out. By the way, these subtle changes that I'm making right now, this is what's going to make your shirt look good. If you skip this step or you try to do it too fast, you're not going to get the same result that I'm going to get. You'll have a far less impressive result. So you have to take your time with this. This is probably going to be the most tedious part of the shirt in general, because you have to erase the like the visual part of separation. So it needs to like seamlessly go from one color to the next. And at some points, that that bridge that you have between the dark color and the light color, it's very short, and those are probably the hardest ones to make. When you have greater distance between the transition, those ones are a bit easier to do because it's a lot more flexible on where you apply the color and all of that. So you just have to go really, really slow. There's really no special secret or anything other than just taking your time and making it look like what it looks like in the reference photo. Taking your time is the secret there. You don't need to have like special skills or abilities or anything. Everybody has time. And so the people that spend the most time are going to have the best results, with the exception of people that are able to work faster simply due to efficiency or proficiency. Yeah, over mixing colors is another struggle, which is why what I recommend doing is, if you see the approach that I've done on this, I used black, I used navy blue, I used light, I used this lighter blue, and then I used gray. So I've used 4 pencils. I've used only 4 pencils to do this shirt. I'm going to introduce a 5th pencil, but I'm holding off on it. I'm not there yet. And what I would recommend, if you struggle with like getting muddy colors, or your colors are just all bleeding together too much, what I recommend doing is cutting back on the number of colors that you're using. Because as you can see, I've been able to get this far with just 4 colors. And what I refer to it as is maximizing your color palette. So if you have a selection of just, let's say, 2 colors, use those 2 colors and using just those 2 colors or 3 colors or 4 colors, get as close as you possibly can to what it's supposed to look like, with an emphasis on value. And value is the light to dark range that you have. So in this case, I went as black as the black pencil will let me go, and then I used the navy blue to bridge the gap between the lightest gray and the lightest blue. And So in that regard, I've maximized what these pencils are capable of producing. I have all the color range that I can out of these 4 pencils, and I have the maximum value range as well. I have the lightest color that I can possibly have, and I have the darkest color I can possibly have, and then I've used just these 4 pencils to bridge the gap between all of those different values. And only once I've finished maximizing these 4 pencils, because it's a lot easier to maximize 4 colors and 3 colors and 2 colors than it is to maximize 7, 8, 9, 10. So I always keep my color selection really, really low. In fact, I keep it as low as possible in order to make that maximization process as easy as possible. And that's how you can avoid over mixing, because you don't have enough colors to do anything like over mixing. And then only once you maximize those colors do you introduce 1, 2, or 3 other colors. And that's it. I don't know if you watched the tutorial. I mentioned it a few times the past like couple weeks, but theoretically, with just a single pencil, you have an infinite range of values at your disposal. So you have the maximum of what that color can create, and then you have the absence of that color, and then you have everything in between, and the distance between the nothing and the absolute value of the pencil is infinite theoretically. And so maximizing just a single color, say for instance using a graphite pencil to create a realistic drawing, you have infinite potential there with just a single color. So once you start introducing a second, third, fourth color, you have just an absurd amount of potential there with just 4 colors. And sometimes people just use too many colors too often. That's the main problem, and that's where you're going to get muddy looking pictures, because instead of maximizing the minimum amount of colors required, they just bring in too much color altogether. Gosh, it's getting really close. I'm gonna have to leave soon. I really want to finish this. Probably like 10, maybe 15 more minutes, and I'll just have to leave. I did not anticipate this taking as long as it is, but I want to do it right. So sometimes you just gotta spend the time to make it right. Alright, I have this top edge of this highlight here left. I'm going to use my blender really quick after I apply some of this color here and see if I can't smooth out these highlights a bit more. And then I will add the highlights with the lighter gray color, and I think I can call it done. So I'm just going to use my paper blender here, smooth things out a bit. And I'm using the smallest, most delicate amount of pressure that I can, because I don't want things to move beyond what I want them to. So sometimes you just gotta be super, super delicate. Like to the point that you're only imagining that you're touching the paper. Let your imagination do the blending, because that's about how much pressure I'm adding. An imaginary amount of pressure. Detailing is important for hyper-realistic drawing. I'm not sure if that is a question, but if it's a statement, that is not true. Detail is not the secret to photorealism. Anytime it comes to realism in general, the most important quality is values. Maximizing correct values. Because the reason values are more important than detail is you draw hair. You can look at drawings of hair like online. Google just drawings of hair, and you'll find people that have a tremendous amount of detail in their hair, but their hair also looks horrible. You can add all the detail you want to certain things, but that's not what creates realism. The most important quality in realism is the value range. That will always be the top priority. Getting the correct values. And the next thing will be color. So values, number one, color, number two, and then number three is texture, and then number four would be details. Because obviously if you're lacking details, you'll only have a certain degree of realism, but if you're talking about hyperrealism, because another counter argument for details being most important is you can have hyper realistic things that are not in focus, right? So take any photo of anything. There's probably going to be objects or things, most likely the background, that's not in focus, right? It's just blurry nonsense. You can't even recognize what it is most of the time. It's just blurry nonsense. So if you were to recreate that and for some arbitrary reason start adding unnecessary levels of detail in the background, it's no longer going to look right or even good for that matter. So that blurriness is not detail, but you have to be able to do that. And what's important with blurriness? Again, contrast. It's always going to go back to contrast. Contrast, color, texture, then detail. Because right now this shirt doesn't have any detail at all. It's just flat color. There's no detail in it. But I focused on getting the right contrast, then I focused on getting the right color, and now I am doing the highlights using 110, and this is going to be the last thing because I really do need to go. So I'm just going to create a bit of highlight in parts of the highlights. Just scratch a little bit of this on there. Doesn't take a lot to produce the highlight, so. And if you want to get really textured and detailed with the shirt, you can start doing dots to create some of the texture that the shirt is. Not totally necessary though, just so you're aware. I didn't see the question about this Selnier, or however you pronounce it. I've never used either of those products, so I can't give you my opinion on them. I'm gonna have to do that detail a little bit in a second. Right around the neckline of the shirt, there's some threading that you can see. It's very subtle, but I want to try to get it. A little bit of a highlight right here as well. There. Just very subtle changes in the blue there. And now I need the black pencil. I need to create this line. There. And then I'll use this to create just a few indications of the thread. You won't see this on camera, but I'm just doing tiny little dots here for the threading. And I don't see it anywhere else. The threads, that is. And then over here I need to do the black. And this needs to be darker down here. So I'm going to apply a little bit more of the black right here to create a small shadow. Up here, this needs to be black. And then over here, this all needs to be black. And there we go. The shirt is complete. Would I recommend sandpaper for pastels? Yes, I would. UArt and Fisher are good papers for soft pastels. Pastel pencils, not the best because it's so rough. When it comes to pastels, soft pastels, sandpaper's great, but when it comes to pastel pencils, it's not the greatest. Pastel matte is still always going to be the greatest there. Anyways, I have to leave like in 5 seconds. So this stream is complete. Thank you guys so much for coming by and hanging out. I appreciate it. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you on Thursday. We're going to continue on the colored pencil project. And other than that, have a fantastic rest of your Tuesday. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.